Okay, so we are in the studio here with Uke Li, who's the president of Cosplayer Nation. They are putting out their big documentary. Should be out later this year, right?
That's correct. In 2013.
Very nice.
December or November. But late, 2013.
Okay. So why don't you start off and just tell us a little bit about what Cosplayer Nation is?
Yes, Cosplayer Nation is a nation that's governed by cosplayers. There's a president, there's a emperor, I'm just kidding. It's a documentary on cosplayers all across America. The initial objective was to do a documentary about Northeast cosplayers, like cosplayers in the New York area, New England, like Boston and New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and just to see what cosplay was like in that area of America. And then eventually it just kind of transcended to other areas like Miami and Oklahoma, California. It just, people heard about our project and they asked us to, hey, can you come over here and document some of our cosplayers over here? And we worked it out. It wasn't all something that just happened overnight, but it was, it started since December of 2010. And it's, I think as of now, it's probably a year and a half that we've been doing it. But we've been blessed to visit many states, most of which I've never been to before. Nice. Recently, we're in Indiana. We've been to Washington State, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, South Dakota. Almost a lot of places on the East Coast as well, being that we're based in Boston, Massachusetts. So Massachusetts, New York, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, kind of, Miami. So yeah, we're always looking for the next place to go. But now, since then, now the focus of the documentary has been about how cosplay started in America,
right?
How it has, the Japanese saw it and then they did their own thing, and then bounced back to America, and now America's just kind of exploding everywhere with cosplayers, and it's just getting bigger. I don't really see it dying. But it's kind of evolving into this other thing, and it's not just anime. It's anime and Adventure Time, steampunk. You've got a whole bunch of other genres out there. So our documentary is focusing on that history and how people deal with it in America, and also the trials that they go through, and where we think it might be heading, according to the testimonies of many that we've interviewed all across America.
Well, let me ask you, you guys have been now all over the East Coast, the West Coast, Middle America. Is there any difference in the stuff that people cosplay as in the different areas of America?
I have found, it's due to weather. Some parts may tend to dress up a bit more heavily. One example is SakuraCon in Washington State. When I went there, they had a lot of furry cosplayers. There were definitely some giant robot cosplays, specifically a StarCraft 2 Marine who was probably like 7 or 8 feet tall. Wow. I didn't see this guy at that convention when I was there, but I was told the year before at SakuraCon there was a guy who did the Avatar giant robot costume.
Nice.
And he was in the masquerade, but he had done that at SakuraCon. And then it's kind of interesting. You go out to some place like Oklahoma, and you figure, people might be... It's pretty hot when they host that con. It's in July, basically. And you figure maybe they're not wearing as much clothing or what have you, but, you can go to that con and still see people dressed up in, like, the skin-tight Catwoman or Batman outfits, or, what's her name? I don't know why I'm blanking out. It's the motorcycle cat chick with the black... Kelty, yeah, that's right. Kelty. Yeah, so you'll see a couple of those around, too. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm sweating in this, but, it's worth it because they like it for the show. They like it for the photos. And I think the most drastic one for me, as far as, like, heat, is probably Otakon. Otakon is in July. It's going to be in August than this year, but... I remember walking out there. I have this Gantz suit that's like pretty much skin-tight leather or pleather, and every time you'd walk out for like maybe 2 minutes anywhere in the Otakon heat weather, it's in Maryland, by the way, for those who don't know, you'd probably be sweating like within... I had to, like, that's the only con where I had to take off my entire not my pants, but my top, and just walk around. And there's a massive heat wave there. I haven't been there yet when it's raining, so I don't know what that's like, but I can tell you in the heat, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some places where it's very, the weather depends. The last story I guess I'll share is when we went to Miami, Florida. I heard from some people saying that the people will do some like bikini cosplay photo shoots on Miami Beach, and
Nice.
yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a castle area in around the coast of Florida, and some people would go there and they would do these either bikini or some like really scandalous cosplay photo shoots there.
Anime, why are we not going to that con and taking pictures?
I know.
Come
Yeah.
on. That sounds great. Now, I want
Welcome to
really
Florida.
know. I know, right? So, in this movie that you guys are making, are you like following like a few different cosplayers? Are you just doing an interview with a lot of the people that you meet? What are some of the people we can expect to see?
So this is a combination of a lot of cosplayers. Because of that, we couldn't fit the style of following like one or two or three specific individuals. In the documentary, you will probably see maybe an individual showing up more than once. One example is we interviewed Megan Marie, who's the manager of the community online manager for Crystal Dynamics, which does Tomb Raider. She's also a very extravagant cosplayer, and she talks about her experiences as being an online presence as a cosplayer and what that means to her, because essentially she's like a role model, and a lot of people look up to her, and she does tutorials, and she also talks about her experiences about how she got trolled and things like that, and how she overcame that. So we have different sections in the documentary where we talk about the making of cosplay, the history of it, what it means if you get trolled on the internet, and then working when you're cosplaying, things like that. And in each of these sections, eventually we'll bring back one person, like Megan Marie, and she'll add some words to it. Other times we might have another person, like Danny Chu is another guy that we kind of add excerpts in every now and then. So it's more of that kind of style of documentary. But there are some parts where we do follow some people. There was one part in the section that we have the making of cosplay, and it's about, well, what's the stress when you're making cosplay? And one of them is deadlines, or if you're at a con and you're last minute doing stuff. So we followed a group of people who actually were making costumes last minute at a convention, and we were trying to see, like, okay, what are they doing? What are they trying to do? What kind of stresses are they going under? And he actually, the poor guy, he was making the costume. It was for Star Wars, by the way, and he was trying to sew a piece of foam, and he realized that I guess the foam got double-threaded, so he had to take out all the thread, and we filmed that while it was happening. So, but that was one of the things that I guess we followed while that was happening. The other thing that we kind of follow are also the masquerades. So when people are going up on stage and showing off their costume, we got some of the behind the scenes of what people's feelings are like as they're about to go on stage. Because some of them have never done it before.
Right.
And it's kind of frightening. In fact, it is frightening if you've never done it before and you don't know what to expect, and everything's such a rush. But we got a couple of those emotions in there from various masquerades and costume contests. So I think that was really cool to incorporate that in there.
So what about your own personal cosplay experiences? You were mentioning your Gantz cosplay, which pictures of are very, very cool. How did you get involved in cosplay? How long have you been doing it?
I got involved in cosplay 2003 or 2004. It was Anime Boston. That was my first convention going there, where I saw cosplay. And I knew the internet existed, but I didn't really see cosplay on the internet, I guess, until I actually went to a convention. And when I went there, I honestly thought, well, this is kind of strange. I didn't know. I knew people dressed up. I didn't know it was like that extravagant. There was like a lot of people there, like 4,000 or 3,000 people at Anime Boston at that time. So then the next year when it happened, I wasn't thinking about actually cosplaying to that convention. I wanted to go back, but what got me into it was my RA, who was a resident assistant for at the time at college, she was really into anime, so I met her, and then she asked me, "Hey, are you into dressing up?" And I said, "Well, I know of it. Why?" And then I guess she dressed up as something for Halloween, and she asked me like, "Oh, you should do it." And then I was corrupted by her, so she told me to dress up for Halloween, and
College.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, maybe I could do it to impress her. But we got photos too, and it was actually pretty neat because I haven't seen her in a while, but that's one of the closest photos that we ever got together was us dressing up in costume. Mm-hmm. I was dressed up as Raziel from Angel Sanctuary, white hair, blood, cardboard wings, nice. And it was insane. It was like the first time I'd ever done that, and I liked it so much that I decided to go to Anime Boston the next year as that character. And this was in the age where we didn't have digital cameras, so we had like 60 millimeter, flash photography. I had like maybe 6 or 7 photos I found of myself on the internet, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I found that, yeah, and then I think from there on it just kind of evolutionized into all these other cosplays that I did. Sutengu from Speedgrapher, Karasu from Noain, and then now Gantz, because I love the series so much, and I enjoy the brutality and the sci-fi goriness of it, and it's just that's my love right now.
That's awesome. Yeah. We like Gantz a lot, actually.
Yeah.
We even like the movie they did was
live action movie.
Pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, so did you think that the movie was? I liked how it concluded.
Yeah.
There are some parts that, of course, they couldn't fit everything into it. Like, oh, I wanted to see the dinosaurs, and they didn't have that in there. But, and I liked how stylistically it was done. Like, it wasn't cheesy CGI. It was like, okay, those suits look real. If it was CGI, then all right, I would have believed that somebody made those suits. But were there some parts that you thought were maybe a little slow?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think they definitely went kind of heavy CGI and especially like the final scene. Mm-hmm. So I think that they were trying to kind of space that stuff out. But there were a few really like moments that I totally loved.
Yeah, it's always tough when they're trying to turn an anime into a live action. There's a lot of trouble with a lot of those movies, but I think that Gantz is definitely one of the better ones. Yeah,
and it's what surprised me the most was that when I saw Gantz and how bloody it was, like later on in the manga, I'm like, there's no effing way they're going to make this into a, something more than, it's just going to be a manga. It's going to keep doing that. And one of the main reasons is because right after where they cut off the anime, the 26 episode anime, after that section, they get into like school massacres and all that. And like, they're never going to air that in America. They're just, it's kind of ironic because we have Dead Man Wonderland, and the first episode starts off with
totally.
But at that time, like they can't air Gantz the way that is, or they're gonna have to censor it down or something. But here we are, then a few years later with 2 live action movies. I'm like, wow, they've really popularized on that. Yeah. So I guess dreams do come true.
So I wanted to ask, it makes sense in cosplay how something will explode and it'll get really big that year. Like, for instance, this year it was all about Attack on Titan. That was like the big sort of anime cosplay we saw. The year before, oddly enough, it wasn't really anime. It was sort of like, Adventure Time. And the year before that was like Doctor Who. What do you think is, do you have any idea what's going to be like the next big thing? Do you have anything on your radar?
I think everyone's going to wear a couple of shades and Conan O'Brien t-shirts and go as Mr. President from Cosplayer Nation and carry a canister of... I think... but that would be really great, by the way. People are probably going towards... I think I see like a mix of stuff. Like, for example, now that we know Star Wars and Disney are like this together, there's going to be like a orgy, if you want to call it, of like Disney and Star Wars combo together. I saw recently, actually, my friend Annalise, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, I saw a photo of her at San Diego Comic-Con. She was Cruella de Vil, and then she was standing next to 2 Star Wars characters. One was Darth Vader, and the other was Boba Fett. However, it was Darth Vader who had like a pimp jacket, and Boba Fett was wearing like a gold keychain necklace and like gangster stuff on it, and it was just, wow, that's really cool to see that, that mix of cosplay, at least here in America.
Yeah.
I've never really seen that elsewhere. Like, if I've looked at cosplay photos in Russia and France and Japan, and they're really, they stick on to like the perfection of the fine details of that character. And here we have that, and then also you just get like some very funny, weird combinations. I saw a Sailor Moon Avengers team in Anime USA in Virginia, or excuse me, Washington D.C. last year. So I really see this like, there's going to be a lot of wacky mixes of things like that.
One of my favorites that we see all over the place is Homer Simpson Vegeta.
Yeah.
I've seen that too. Yeah.
He shows up a lot. Yeah. It's so
Where
true,
is he
though.
based? Yeah.
He's got to be out here.
He must be, because we've seen it at Anime Expo, Comic-Con.
Kamikaze,
wow. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you're right. I think that is something that we have noticed is, I think for some people, the way that they can really be unique is by mixing things. I remember last year we saw girls, also Sailor Moon, but they were doing Sailor Moon Akatsuki from Naruto.
That's pretty neat, yeah.
Yeah, and
I've never seen that before, yeah.
You're right. We're finding a lot of that, too. And I think that's really unique.
Show their originality by doing that.
And really, just totally awesome. I also want to ask about, like, future cosplay. Like, for instance, we were already seeing girls dressed as the new Tomb Raider before the movie came out.
The game,
Yeah, the game, yeah. The pictures would come out, and then there were already people cosplaying. There were people cosplaying as Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth from BioShock before the game came out. Are you seeing a lot more of that in the past few years?
Yeah, I do see that. The Tomb Raider especially, as soon as that game came out, and it's like almost at every con, I'll see at least one person cosplaying as Tomb Raider. Even the one at Indiana.
Dang that bat phone.
Call her on the line. What do you want to ask?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I was actually surprised there weren't more people as, like, the guy from Watch Dogs, even though that movie hasn't come out, because they're already, like, establishing these iconic looks, that we're seeing in these pictures and trailers. And
right,
like that.
And I think it's all about the marketing. It's and that's another thing that we kind of bring up in our documentary is, like, the way that people dress when you see people cosplaying as something that you've never seen before. Like, what is that? And then they tell you it's from a video game or an anime or something like that. But the fact that you've seen it is a success to whoever was behind that video game or anime or what, because basically they didn't pay that guy to do it, but they were in love with it so much they decided to dress up in basically their free advertising for that company. So I think the marketing of things is definitely a big influence in how cosplay is getting out there. Tomb Raider, I think, is probably one big example of that because the trailers for that, and Megan Marie, who I mentioned earlier, she's a big involvement in that, and that's probably a contribution to that success of seeing people cosplay as Tomb Raider, Lara Croft. And then kind of on tangent of that, Kick-Ass 2 is coming out in about 2 weeks. Maybe it's me, but I'm surprised I haven't seen as much, Kick-Ass cosplayers out there.
Yeah.
At least in the cons I've been to recently. I haven't. Maybe I was blind, but I remember a time when Kick-Ass did come out, and I saw a lot of hit girls. I definitely saw a lot of. I saw Red Mist. I saw Kick-Ass himself. Yeah, but now I haven't. I don't know, but I mean, it's kind of funny how these things happen. It's like Adventure Time. That's another one. Huge fandom, and a lot of people are really into that cartoon series. So the marketing of some things, how they present themselves, it really gets people to dress up. So I think that definitely influences people. I think one other thing that Johnny Depp, that's another one.
Yeah,
you see a lot of
right.
Johnny Depp characters. I mean, it's like as soon as like a Johnny Depp movie comes out, the Willy Wonka or Sweeney Todd, Edward Scissorhands. He was in the Lone Ranger. That's another one too. So
we've seen guys just cosplaying as Johnny Depp.
Yeah,
like interview Johnny Depp with the hat and the glasses and the mustache and the cigarette. It's truly bizarre.
Yeah.
It's
funny when you see that.
We also like people that just cosplay as like weird stuff. Like there was a lady once who cosplayed as like Flo from those
the progressive
weird
commercials, progressive insurance
ads.
commercials.
I have seen that. Yes, there's a nice young woman in Massachusetts I know. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. Forgive me. I'll Facebook her later. But she does like Flo from Progressive. She's done that a few times, and she has like red hair. Mm-hmm. So I never thought it was her until I saw the pictures later on. I'm like, wow, that is her. But yeah, no, I've seen that. That's kind of funny. And I've seen a guy do Mayhem from Allstate Insurance.
Nice.
At Katsukon this year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask about, we've noticed a really big movement over the past few years in cosplay, and it's been the Homestuckers. Homestuck obviously is a web comic. It's getting very big, especially with, I think, kids around the ages of, I would say, like 11 to 18 particularly. That's kind of the core audience. What do you find? Do you find there's like sort of a difference? Is there like a separation between the Homestuck kids and everyone else who cosplays, or would you put them all like in the same group?
No, I don't think there's any difference. Yeah, it's when I first saw them, and this was before I knew anything about Homestuck, I really thought they were like part of some anime series that I just hadn't, because there's so much anime out there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what is this? And then I found out, oh, it's a webcomic. And yet, beknownst to me, it was a webcomic that was apparently ever present at almost every con, and almost every con that you go to, you will see like somebody cosplaying as Homestuck folks. And they have big gatherings. It's not just like one or two. It's like you're going to see like 10 or maybe 50 of them bunched together. It's like they've got a mafia out there or something like that. It's I think cosplay as defined by Nobuyuki Takahashi, when we interviewed him, said it's, in his words, to this extent, he said it's two things: dressing up as like a nurse, police officer, a judge, basically dressing up as like somebody who might be, just for the, like Halloween, just
right.
dressing up. And then the second part is dressing up as characters from a different genre. So whether it's like American sci-fi or Japanese anime, video games, steampunk, any other genre. So that's the second part. And then, if something like Homestuck, it's a webcomic. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a genre in of its own. And there's some other webcomics out there, actually, that people are cosplaying from.
Right.
And it's kind of like a triple subculture within a culture, subculture itself, but it's all cosplaying the same. It's just, what genre is it part of? So, yeah, I do think it's part of the same thing, and you'll definitely see a lot of the joy is like when somebody recognizes you as that character from whatever webcomic it is, and they realize what it is, and that's that value, that feeling is intrinsic. So
there's kind of two different types of people that cosplay at the conventions. There's the ones that have spent like months on their costumes, or had their costumes made, and then there's kind of the more closet cosplayers, the ones that like they're showing their fandom, but like they pretty much just make it out of things in their closet. I don't know about you, but sometimes I've noticed a lot of clash between those two groups. How do you feel about that kind of thing? Just about, the different groups and the potential conflict between both.
Yeah, I've heard of that many times, and geez, where do I start? I feel like if let me start with the example of a person who this is probably the best way to explain it. I'm poor. I have nothing else to do. I can't buy that $100 costume on eBay. All right, I'm just gonna do what I can do, and I'll work hard, and I'll do it. And you make the costume. Probably cost you maybe $7 just to get like the yarn or the leather or the clothing. It takes you maybe a month, but you get it done, and you did it with within less than $7. That's terrific. And then there's some other people who, I don't have I don't have enough time to go out and make my costume, but I've got $100 that I got from like maybe my Christmas present. I'm gonna go out and buy a wig or that outfit so I can go to this con and meet all these people and have fun. So you got those two examples. What's common about both of them is that they're both doing it so that they can make people happy, or because they love the series so much. So that's what I find that's in common with those two. So in essence, I don't think there's a difference really between one or the other as far as if one's good or bad. As long as you're in love or you're passionate about it and you're going out there to have fun, then that's really all that counts. Now, of course, there's some fine lines like, oh, you're going to masquerade and you have a bought costume. Well, of course, that's a no-no. But if, as long as you remember some things like that, then, I think the passion is basically what drives people to do it. So whether you're making it, spending a month on it, or you're buying that outfit, the intentions of doing that character pretty much sums up to the same thing, whether you're buying it or making it. I know that there are some people we've talked to who have been kind of chastised for buying their costume or buying some parts of it and being told that they're not a true cosplayer. And it's kind of sad to hear that. It's unfortunate, and I know that it's not something that's going to go away, but it's something that in our documentary we expose some of that, and I think it's important to let people know about that because we don't want to paint it as this thing that, it's all, I mean, it is great, but there are also some other things out there that people should know about the cosplaying side of it. But we do tie it in together to say that, it's as long as you're doing it for whatever the passion that you're doing for the character, as long as you believe and, do it for good intentions, and that's really all that counts. But, yeah, that's what I would say about that.
So in the journey of making this documentary, did you learn things about cosplay you never really expected?
Yes, actually, I'm just trying to think like where I could start on that. The first thing I didn't know about, and this is true, I didn't really know that cosplay started here in America, as far as the Star Wars and the Star Trek cosplayers and the sci-fi and the fantasy cosplayers and the horror conventions too that happened like from the 1930s until 1980s and still ongoing, of course. So I didn't know that history of America influenced Japan to create the term cosplay, and then suddenly they started cosplay on their own. All this time I thought the cosplay just began in Japan because they were so into anime, and they were the Japanese are very good at imitating things from other cultures. There's I don't know if you've ever been to Japan. I've heard from other people that they do like cowboy karaoke bars and things like that. Just things that are based on America, and they're really good at, and they Japanize this way of life, whether it's from America or Russia or somewhere else. So I thought, dressing up, they just really know how to do that because they're just Japanese. But that's one thing I didn't know about. The other thing I did know about also was people using different types of material for cosplay as far as resources. Like when they're doing leather, you think, okay, maybe they're just going to sew it, but they actually have this entire science about how to do it. And I think using things like epoxy and so many other the most craziest thing I heard of was this girl in Detroit for Youmacon. She was cosplaying as Princess Mononoke, and she said, "My grandfather killed this deer to make the boots that I'm wearing right now." and that's in the documentary, by the way. But there's some people who go out there and they go hunting because that's their way of life, and they use their resources around them, like deer fur, to make things like boots or a pouch or something like that for a costume. It's kind of amazing to see what you see out there. Kind of on relation, there was a guy who did Economic Depression Darth Vader in San Diego Comic-Con. Right. He was wearing a trash bag and like a cardboard thing for his chest, and it had like, I think, stamps for his buttons or whatever. So it's funny what you see out there for people doing things like that. But yeah, I think, I'm trying to think, is there anything else that I've learned about this? I've also learned that there's still, even though cosplay is like getting huge in America, and it's undoubtedly, San Diego Comic-Con, PAX East, all the big conventions, there's still somewhat of a judgment in America, I believe, that if you try to explain it to somebody, I think now people are probably, just from my personal experience, they're a bit more accepting now in this where we are, but there may be still some people who will, as much as you try to explain it to them, they'll still think like a one-sided view, and they immediately have that judgment just because, and maybe it's because they had a bad experience with a cosplayer, maybe it's because they saw something on TV and they just immediately judge it by that, or maybe it's some other miseducation. So that's the point of our documentary, is that we want to re-educate people about what people do and what it's like, and how to make it different from what people perceive of it, and especially the media. People have seen King of the Nerds. There was some, discussions about how they liked or disliked the cosplay scenes there. We kind of mentioned that in our documentary, actually, and we also, there's now going to be a sci-fi cosplay series called Heroes of Cosplay, which features a lot of prominent cosplayers like Yaya Han and Holly Conrad, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. So, seeing how the media portrays that, I think definitely influences how America sees it, and not only just America. I mean, you think of the big picture. Everyone looks at America. So, like, what is Europe seeing on America, or what's South America seeing at America when they see, cosplay being exemplified? So I think there's definitely a bigger thing going on, and we just have to show the right thing, and that's what we're trying to do in our documentary.
I think you're absolutely right. I pwned some old people. Remember that one time?
Oh, yeah, totally.
We were at WonderCon, and the thing about WonderCon is it's at the Anaheim Convention Center, and it's so big there that, it's not always just people there for WonderCon. And there were a few older people there, and they were like, oh, look at these kids dressed up. Jeez, like, I can't believe they would bother doing this. And I was like, and we were right next to them on the escalator. I'm like, dude, it's your generation's fault. You were the guys that started dressing up because of Star Trek. The Star Trek conventions is what kind of started this all. And they were like, oh, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Because I read a book about it, and how, like, because of the fandom and the cancellation of Star Trek, all of a sudden you get all these girls who are making costumes for themselves, making costumes for their boyfriends, and and as you referred to earlier, this sort of, and then went on after that with Star Wars and stuff, and how it has been around for a long time, but you're right, there is still a lot of people that they got to get a clue. It's not just like Halloween, or it's not just a bunch of weirdos. I mean, most of us, we dress up, and then we, go back to our normal life and, work at our jobs and pay our bills and all that other stuff.
Right. And it's like, if you don't agree with that, then, do you celebrate Halloween? I mean, that might be a good survey in itself. Do you go to Halloween? Do you dress up?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I do. And if you get a lot of people, it doesn't matter like what the reason, like, oh, I go there to get drunk, or I go there to have fun and meet friends, take photos, and, if do you go out to Halloween, yeah, okay. If you do, then that's, why cosplay is out there. And just to, on another point, a lot of people like, oh, they cosplay, they do it every day. It's like, no, they don't do it every single day. I mean, unless they were paid by, like, the company to do it, like, cheers to them. I mean, if they did every day, that should be in the Guinness World Book of Records, or Guinness Records.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Somebody should do that, right?
Endorsed by the president of Cosplayer Nation.
There you go.
So, I mean, people don't do it every day. They do it when they go to cons, and it's just, it is like Halloween, but it's for every event that is like Halloween, whether it's Anime Expo, San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, KatsuCon, Tokyo and Tulsa, whatever. It's SodaCon. That's really what it is. So, yeah, it's funny. I think one time when I there was a guy. This is when I was first cosplaying. It was actually when I was doing Raziel from Angel Sanctuary. I was walking out and I was just exiting, and there's a guy. He's on his phone. He's like, he's just trying to find like what characters are dressed up as. It's like, hey, you, who are you? And I was dressed up as Raziel from Angel Sanctuary. It's like, I'm Raziel from Angel Sanctuary. It's like, all right, I'm here with Raziel from Angel Sanctuary. That's like the 50th guy I found dressed up here today. And I'm standing here in this lobby area, and he was a riot. And I walked out, and There's just some people who are like really amazed by it, which actually, to turn around, it gives us a good chance to teach them about cosplay and what this culture is all about.
So one of my favorite things is hearing some of the younger cosplayers kind of talk about trying to explain what they were doing to their parents, like when they're going to the conventions. So what do you think is the best way to break it to your parents that you're a cosplayer?
Oh, man. Yeah, I really have to think about this one. Because I have my own personal experiences talking about my dress up to my folks have never seen pictures of my cosplay. They know I do it, but they've never seen pictures of it. And I'm a bit frightened to know what they would think if they did see it, to be honest. I think the best way to say it is let them know that relate to them on a level that they can relate to. Just say it's like Halloween, and it's like Halloween except for certain conventions, and people are very hyped up and they're excited to see your character. Halloween and Disney, I think, you go to a Disney park and people see characters, and they're very hyped up. They want to take photos, they want to get your autographs, and a whole bunch of other.
Walk around in the Mickey Mouse ears.
Exactly. I think that's the best way to describe it. The reason I put it that way is because I had an experience before where somebody thought of cosplay in the negative type. When I say negative, I mean their experience was they thought it was about fetishists and people who were best dressed up in like BDSM type of outfits.
Jeez.
Yeah, that does go on, but that's not all of cosplay. It's just like it's kind of like another triple subculture of cosplay. And I've been to those before. They're really fun. They're friendly people. Some of them are very open about what they do, and it's not like they're exclusive. But I think if you present it in a presentable way, so that your parents can relate to it, then that would probably be the best thing to do. Not something like something that would turn them off and get them thinking that it's all sketchy and you're dealing with drug dealers and rapists and things like that. It's
an
but
alternative lifestyle, Mom and Dad. Deal with it.
Yeah. But I think that's probably the way I could describe it. When I was explaining to someone's sibling about the documentary we were doing, and she was really insistent, seeing more about it, because she thought it was about Halloween, but she didn't really get it in her mind. Like, well, all I see is that it's like Halloween, but why do people keep doing this at conventions, even though Halloween isn't there anymore? So, and that was actually a very big turning point in our documentary, because we wanted to, at that point we hadn't really explained that, so to explain that it's something beyond Halloween, it's a release from what you're doing, whether you're paying bills, you're working 20 hours a week or 40 hours a week, and you want to get out and show people your love for the character that you're doing, and get a lot of photos, or go to the masquerade, or even just hang out with other people who are dressed up as your character, and you talk about the fandom in person, not just like online. And explaining that part, I think, really helped to that individual, really helped us shape the Cosplayer Nation documentary.
So I want to ask, once in a while when we go to these conventions, we meet these people, and they are very into their character. As in, they're pretty much their character nonstop, and sometimes it can be a cool character, sometimes it can be a character that's kind of popular for being a little more annoying. Do you guys have any of that in your documentary?
So since you guys are from LA, California, have you ever seen the Power Ranger, the Red Power Ranger?
Oh yeah. We've been to so many we've been to conventions in 2008. I swear, ever since we've been going, he's at every single convention we see.
So I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I saw him at Anime Expo in 2011. I'm like, holy F, that guy's pretty gutsy. And then I saw him again at like other, around the West Coast at least.
Yeah.
And he just like strategically photobombs, or he just, hey, touch this.
Yeah.
He always walks around with some kind of weird like thing to make him seem phallic, and
Yes. So I have seen that. I have seen at Otakon, I've seen a lot of like shirtless guys with sunglasses or something, or some kind of like Pokemon type of outfits, dressing around, and headbanging or fist bumping. We had that happen to us when we were interviewing a Spider-Woman cosplayer, and suddenly they came in and they just charged our interview, and they were like, "Hey, check!" I don't know what they were saying. I forget. This was like about a year and a half ago, but they were. We'll have to upload that footage, and you'll see it on Cosplayer Nation, the YouTube. But they came in and they interrupted us, and then they went off and they did their own thing. But yeah, shirtless guys in Pokemon outfits. I've seen that. It's kind of like a trend or a cult. It's another.
I think what Dave was more asking about was like there's a couple guys who dress as different versions of the Joker, who while throughout the entire convention they are fully in character.
Oh yeah,
as the
sure.
Joker. Do you have anyone like that that's interviewed in the documentary?
Yeah, we have a Rorschach that we talked to. We asked him a question like, "Oh, so why are you at an anime convention?" Because we were at Anime Boston when we met him. He's like, "I'm here to find justice and destroy all the anime cosplayers here because I believe in comics," and something to that extent. And then we found out he was wearing sneakers. And I was like, "Why are you wearing sneakers?" Like, good question. Didn't have enough money. And he did this in the Rorschach voice, and it was just totally spot on. We didn't include this in the documentary, but later on he put on glasses because he had to sign the document to do the release for him. He's like, "Well, Rorschach wears glasses." Like, "Yes, can't see. I'm blind. Sorry. Don't film that." Something like that. We had a guy who was dressed as Cobra Commander, and he told us, "Vote for me for president. If not, you can go to Canada where I will nuke you," and a whole bunch of other shenanigans. And I think the biggest one is Mr. T, McDaniel McLeod. You can look him up on Facebook, but this is the Mr. T cosplayer, based in Boston, Massachusetts, and he's been to pretty much almost everywhere on the East Coast. I don't know if he's been out to the West Coast yet, but he will do the gurs. He'll pick people up. He'll carry a giant bazooka. He's got the gold chains. He really is like Mr. T. So he's really into the character, and we got him in our documentary as well too. And then the latest guy I met was Harley's Joker in Puerto Rico Comic Con. Yeah, I didn't actually meet him personally, but I know he was around, and he was doing very Jokerish type of stuff, like forcing grins on people's faces or something. But no, it was really cool to hear that he was there and doing that. So yeah, it's actors, cosplay and acting. It's a whole different field. It's like you think dressing up as the character, but getting into the actual character and being that person, it's kind of like schizophrenia, but in a good way. Yeah. In a good or maybe creepy way. And, I don't know, double agent CIA type of personality. But it's, that is cosplay for you.
So with all the time that you've been involved with Cosplayer Nation, and this is kind of a tough question, but do you think there's one thing that is the most popular cosplay that, overall you'll see the most of every convention?
Yeah, what's the most popular? I guess it depends on what kind of convention you go to. To break it down very broadly, so if you go to an anime convention, you'll probably see a lot of anime characters. If you go to a comic convention, it's most likely a lot of the comic characters or zombies, because now Walking Dead and zombies are very much into the comics, the comic genre. And then steampunk is kind of at both cons, and then I've noticed the Homestuck cosplayers you'll see mostly at the anime cons, a lot. But the most frequent cosplayers, I guess it depends on what kind of con it is. So that's probably my answer to that.
I think for me, we go to a lot of these, and there always seems to be, no matter what con we go to, there always seems to be at least 10% of the people are Star Wars. I would say probably. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the one thing that is always a constant. Like for instance, Doctor Who,
Oh yeah, that's a
kinda-
huge one.
Kind
That's
of
another
people
one too. Yeah.
cosplayed it.
There's definitely people at every convention as Doctor Who characters, but it's
But-
definitely more so at like the comic conventions.
But when Matt Smith became the Doctor, it like exploded.
True.
Because then all of a sudden it was bow ties, it was fezzes. Before that, there were people cosplaying, but I think got giant after that. But I've always consistently sort of seen like Star Wars. There's more Star Trek now than there was, because of the movies. But yeah, no, I mean it does seem to be though kind of a more of a trending thing. So it was kind of an unfair question, but I figured I'd just ask anyway, just for the fun of it.
Yeah, Star Wars, going back to like the pimp Star Wars, the example I was giving about earlier. Yeah, I mean you've got the 501st, and then you've got I forgot the name of it. The Rebel, the 501st is the Imperial, I think, Star Wars thing. Then you've got the Rebel group as well. But yeah, they go everywhere, and they're an international presence. So it's like those guys, they know how to publicize themselves because they're international. They're like Singapore, Japan, and America.
Yeah.
Where else better to do it? Obviously. But yeah, I mean they've got a huge following, and the Star Wars stuff, you definitely, you do definitely see that at almost every con. I actually saw at Indiana for the first time a bunch of Grievous cosplayers. And I've never seen that before. But I saw it in Indiana, and it was an anime con called IkasaCon. And I'm like, wow. But there was a Grievous cosplayer, and there was like a couple of stormtroopers. But yeah, the Grievous was actually pretty neat to see. So I did see that there.
So let me ask: Are you still shooting pickups for this thing? Are you still doing stuff like at Comic-Con or Anime Expo this year? Or are you guys like in the can, all set, no more, can't add anymore?
I think it depends on what the footage is. If we get something that really fits the documentary, then we'll go ahead and we'll put that in there. But at this moment, documentary is slated to be screened at Otakon in Maryland. I don't know what day yet, but it's going to be between August 9th and the 11th, one of those days. And Otakon's like the largest convention on the East Coast, anime convention on the East Coast. It's a big honor for us. But all the footage that we have up to this point, if it seems like it's relatable to the documentary, we will put it in. And after the documentary gets released at Otakon, we are still going to conventions. What we want to do is we want to post interviews and footage of what cons are like on our YouTube channel, which is Cosplayer Nation TV. If you Google up Cosplayer Nation on YouTube, you'll find it. But it's a way to let other people know about what other cons are like, whether you're in Atlanta or Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Alaska per se, and maybe Canada. We might go internationally in the future.
It could be a sequel.
Yes, that is definitely a big thing on the horizon. I can't give any details yet, but I know our CEO was definitely thinking that about a couple months ago. So
awesome.
So we'll see what happens. But we don't want to stop. We want to show people what cosplay is like in other parts of the United States and other areas of the world.
So what are you most excited for the people who are going to go see this movie, like, to see? What is it like that you're really hoping to sort of introduce to people, whether they be cosplayers or people who, only consider possibly cosplaying?
There are two parts I'd like to do. For the person or the people who have never seen cosplay before, have no idea what it's about, I'd like to educate them, bring them into this culture, and show them, okay, this is what it's about. Kind of like if you've never seen a documentary on gun control, then, all right, I'll watch Bowling for Columbine. So that's kind of what we want to do for those people who have never seen it before. And then for the people who have seen or know about cosplay, we want to introduce something new for them, whether it's like how to make a certain costume when you have so little money, or how people deal with trolling on the internet, how people deal with getting hate mail, or how people deal with going through costume masquerades and things like that. And so teaching something new to people who have already cosplayed. It's so it's kind of twofold. We want to explore both those areas.
So I want to know, I don't want to go too far in the future here, but let's say, you guys put this out, it's successful, you want to make a new one. Is there going to be any way for, like, a person to be like, to get in touch with you and be like, hey, I want to be in the next one? They can send like an audition tape or something like that. Is that possible?
Yeah, the best way to do that is if you want to audition, interview, or send your stuff over to us. Our email, it's cosplayernation@gmail.com. The Facebook is facebook.com/cosplay.nation. And those are pretty much the two best ways to get in touch with us, the founders, and the other people who are part of Cosplayer Nation. Whether you want to do an interview or if you want us to come check you out, we'll try to work something out. And that's primarily how we've been able to... That's how we got to all these other conventions around America. It's people contacting us and telling us, hey, you should check out this con in Texas or Arizona or South Dakota. And, yeah, just keep contacting us. That's the way to get us.
And when you do bring it out, are you planning on just bringing it to the different kind of conventions? Or are you putting it into festivals? Or
So the goal is for a Cosplayer Nation documentary to be screened at anime conventions and other conventions besides just anime, whether it's San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con. We want to screen it there first just to get a reaction from the fans. And then if we get a good enough reaction, depending on what we get, then yeah, we would like to get it into film festivals and other places that would be more exposable for all of America and the world.
Awesome.
we should probably wrap it up. So is there anything else that you want people to know about Cosplayer Nation?
I'd like people to know that if you are going to Otakon, we'd love to see you there. It's going to be August 9th to the 11th. That's when we're going to do the initial screening. I don't know what day yet, but it's going to be on one of those days. And the documentary, again, is about the history of cosplay in America, how it got there, and what it's like right now, how it's exploding, and how Americans are dealing with it, the trials, the errors, the making of it, how they deal with trolling on the internet, and how they get past that trolling to do bigger and better stuff, and how we think it's changing in America, and possibly the world. And our YouTube is Cosplayer Nation. Cosplayer Nation TV is our YouTube.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait to see it. We definitely hope we can get a hold of a copy. Uke Li, thank you so much for coming in and spending this time with us.
You're very welcome.
Yay. Cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure's all mine.